Hey everybody, Gary with Basecamp Trading. Let's take a look at trendline breakouts versus channel breakouts, and let's see what the advantages and the disadvantages are to them. Okay, so this afternoon, when we came into the afternoon session, which was right in here, you can see that the ES started going into compression. And at that point, we went ahead and put in our trend lines because you were actually in a bit of a pennant pattern at that point. And you can see that we were right inside this pennant pattern between this trend line across the tops and this trend line down here across the bottoms. And you can see that we were just kind of chopping right inside this trend line, and then we caught this breakout right here to the upside. This ends up being a false breakout, and it wasn't really the best breakout in the world. I mean, it was okay in that we did have some bullish bars leading up to the breakout. Your momentum was increasing, but you can see when the bar actually broke right there, it closed back in here. And that's kind of a red flag, set up the bull flag that actually triggered and didn't follow through. And that's the problem with trendline breakouts is it can get you into a breakout trade earlier, but you have to be aware of wherever your previous pivot high was. And you can see your previous significant pivot high was back here. And you can see you were pivoting back and forth between that pivot high and that pivot low. So that's your significant pivot high and your significant pivot low. And so you had the breakout, didn't follow through, weren't able to get above this previous pivot high right here, pulled back inside your compression zone, came down here, tested the trend line at the bottom, then broke out to the top. Again, no follow through, not able to break above this previous pivot high. And then finally, you did come back down, broke through the bottom, set up the bear flag. The bear flag triggers to the downside. Then you started breaking your previous pivot supports. So this ended up being a nice run to the downside. So a couple false breakouts to the upside. Again, not able to clear your previous pivot resistance up here. Let's go ahead and put the lines on so we can see them clearly. You see previous resistance was right there. Your previous significant pivot support was right there. And of course, you even had a more significant pivot support right here, which was the session low. So anyhow, we were chopping in the channel, false breakout, bounced off the trend line, another false breakout, and then you catch the breakout to the downside, start breaking under your support, and this ended up being a pretty nice trade to the downside. Trend line got you in earlier, and then we ended up breaking through our pivot support. So this ended up being a nice trade to the downside. We were trading this afternoon in the room, caught support right in this area right here and made a pretty significant bounce. You can see bounce all the way back to this trend line that was running across the bottoms, left the big wick, and then just proceeded to go ahead and tank into the close. Let's compare that to a channel break that we had on our Unirenko chart, for example. Same thing, came in during the lunchtime. We started chopping between this significant pivot high right here and this significant pivot low right here. You can see we made a pivot. At this point right here, you know you're in compression. You're pivoting between a significant pivot high, significant pivot low, and you can see we chopped inside this compression zone for a long time. Now we did have a smaller compression zone right here where this power line was. Cut a little breakout right there. Good for only one target, but you could see it could never really clear our significant pivot high, our previous significant pivot high. So it had a little breakout right here. This is coinciding with what we were seeing on the 5-minute chart. False breakout on the trend line right there. Good for one target, but no follow through. You pulled back down, set up a slow line zero touch out of the cloud. Same thing, able to catch one target off, but again, unable to clear our significant pivot high resistance. Pulled back down, chopped around here and a little bit. Again, we're still inside our significant pivot high and pivot low. Pivot low is down here. And you can see we chopped in this area for really a couple hours. And then we came here, and then we had some choppy action right here, but we had some action that kind of gives us a heads up. You can see we had an up, a down, up, down, and then the sellers took control right here. Ended up catching a pullback into the wick off the 18, pushed down, finally broke through the channel, but you can see even still came back up, tested the zone. We broke underneath it, pulled back up, and then finally made a nice run to the downside right there. So the more conservative trade was the channel break, and even on that, you still would have taken a little bit of heat on that trade. You wouldn't have got stopped out, but you would have taken a little heat on that trade, but good for a couple targets to the downside, and ended up making that big pullback back up. That was our small bar chart. We had a couple opportunities off of the large bar chart. Again, we were pivoting, come into the afternoon session, we were pivoting between this significant pivot low right here, which was also your session low, and this significant pivot high right there. And you can see we were just pivoting, pivoting inside this compression zone right here. Broke out to the bottom side. Now these are 4 ticks per bar, so able to catch potentially a couple $100 per contract on the breakout. Then this is where we got that big pullback, came back up to the cloud. This was our break out of the cloud, came back to the cloud, set up a nice wick out of the cloud. Everything in alignment here. 50 SMA under the smooth 50, 34 EMA under the 50 SMA, and 18 EMA under the 34. So a nice wick out of the cloud right here for a nice push down into the end of the day. And depending on how you traded that, could have grabbed 5, 6, up to $700 per contract. Again, just depends on how you were trading that. So our trend lines, they give us an opportunity to potentially get into a trade a little earlier. You have to be aware of where your previous pivots were. Our channel breaks get us in a little bit later, but can be a little more consistent and tend to follow through a little better, because when you're breaking the channel, you're breaking either a significant point of support or a significant point of resistance. And so you can see a couple of nice trades off the inner ankle charts and a trade off the 5-minute chart today in the ES.